What's your accidentally caught your spouse cheating horror story? Story 1. A close friend of mine had an affair with another close friend and got caught when she lost an earring in the bed. After the entire blow up of our friend group and a lot of shaming on both of them, she accused him of assault, leaving everyone stunned and unsure of what to do. To prove his innocence, he had to show his wife and the police home security footage of the woman riding him while he was handcuffed. He cheated, was accused of forcing himself on her, and topped it off by showing his wife a tape with another woman. We didn't all immediately call the woman a liar. We didn't have time to process the fact that a lifelong friend could do something like that before the truth came out, and she started backpedaling. Story 2. A few years ago, I was dating a girl and I became really good friends with her brother because he appreciated my help during a difficult time for their family. Their father had abruptly passed away. 2 years into the relationship, her brother contacted me and asked to meet up for coffee and have a serious conversation. Apparently, he caught his own sister with another guy, a mutual friend of ours, and this had been going on for about a year. As soon as he found out, he told me. I broke up with her, but I'm still friends with her brother. Story 3. I came back from a trip 4 hours early and my wife was supposed to still be at work. When I opened the front door, I saw her sitting topless on the couch making out with a coworker. He ran out the door and she ran into a bathroom and locked the door. I sat on that couch for about an hour because I couldn't think of what else to do. Finally, I just got up and left so she could come out of the bathroom and put a shirt on. Story 4. I'd been on the road for work and was supposed to be away for 10 days. However, I got to go home a day early. A friend picked me up at the airport to surprise my wife and our 2 children, 2 years and 8 months old. But when I walked in, I saw my ex and her coffee friend snuggling on the couch with my kids in the same room. I was livid, but of course she denied everything. We split up weeks later. Story 5. 2 weeks ago, I sent a message to a mutual friend asking to borrow a router, but he didn't answer. No worries though, he lives nearby, so I just stopped by to grab it. As I pulled up to his house and started heading down the driveway, I saw my car. I drive a company vehicle during the day, already there. My heart sank, but they're friends and business partners, so maybe it's nothing. I got out of my van and looked up to see the other guy shirtless in his bedroom. At this point, my heart was in my stomach and I was visibly shaking. I went in and immediately headed upstairs. He was alone, now clothed. I said, I came to borrow the router. Also, have you seen my wife? The car is here. He then proceeded to give the worst improv I've ever heard. Huh? No, she was here at some point, though. Whatever. I knew she was there. I just wanted him to admit it. I went downstairs, took the router, and headed back to the van where I finally encountered my wife topless trying to sneak around the side of his house. And now, here I am. Story 6. I caught my ex thanks to playing Pokemon Go of all things. She mentioned that the app was using a lot of her data, so I showed her how to check her app data usage and proved to her that it wasn't the game but rather Tinder that was consuming more data. It was a sad but also humorous situation. Story 7. One night, my ex told me not to come over because she wasn't feeling well. However, I went to her place anyway to return a hoodie my sister had borrowed, along with some chocolate and a Slurpee. When I knocked on her door, she came to the window with only a blanket wrapped around her and said, I thought I told you not to come over. Then some guy's voice came from her bedroom asking who I was. I realized what was going on and said, I see how it is. She told me she would talk to me tomorrow, but I knew that probably wouldn't happen. Story 8. After a week-long visit with friends in London, England, I returned to the apartment that my ex and I shared in Canada. Although she expected me home at 6 p.m., plans fell through with my other friends, so I ended up driving 4 hours to get back at 6 a.m. When I walked in, exhausted and wanting nothing more than to fall into bed, I found an extra set of feet attached to some jerk in our apartment. Story 9. One of my former coworkers loaded an SD card with a scanned project file onto it in the conference room PC. Unfortunately, the card also contained naked pictures of his wife with another man. During a senior budgetary meeting with outside accountants and auditors, we were shocked when the images suddenly appeared on the projector screen. I quickly shut off the projector and nobody said anything. My coworker got up and walked out, leaving his phone and laptop on the table. He ended up driving to his parents' house 3 states away and was gone for a week. Story 10. Not me, but my dad. He told me the story a few years back. So some of my mom's family were visiting from out of town and they had planned a night at bingo, which my dad couldn't attend because he was working from 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. He finished work early and on his way home, he saw my babysitter on the street. You're not with the kid? He asked. No, she replied. Your wife called me around 8 p.m. saying she wasn't feeling well and that she would stay home. My dad drove home, tried the front door, found it locked with no lights on. He entered the house through the basement door, went up the stairs, and heard them a few feet away. It was my mom and her cousin. 2 years later, he almost left her, with me in tow, but he decided to stay so that I could have a normal life. Most of the time, I wish he had left because he wouldn't have worked 90 to 100 hours a week to avoid being at home and could have been happier. For those who are wondering, my mom had a long-time affair with her cousin, which started before she met my dad. She wasn't happy either, but my dad was a good catch. Yes, I'm sure he's my dad. We look so much alike. And yes, they are still together, and after a year of being angry, I decided to let go because their relationship has nothing to do with me. It's just sad for both of them. Story 11. Long story short, I suspected something for a few months. Like an idiot, I looked through her phone while she was asleep and found exactly what I was looking for, as you always do when searching through someone else's phone. Even with all the texts right there to see, she still lied about it multiple times. She eventually admitted to it but downplayed it heavily. 2 nights ago, she told me that he asked her out on a date and she said I had to say no and was visibly sad about it. We are in the process of getting a divorce now and it hurts like hell. Story 12. After a night of trying to keep up with my ex and her co-workers drinking, I called it a night. They stopped talking a few minutes later and the dog scratched at the door. I let the dog in and saw them making out on the couch. I watched for a good 10 minutes before they noticed me. They were taking their clothes off by then and he was touching her favorite spots like he knew them pretty well. And there was no denying it by then. I'm glad I knew. A tense conversation followed with the two of them. He left very drunk on a very cold night. She got a ride to her aunt's place and begged me to go look for him in the cold. Story 13. My first long-term girlfriend and I were both going to the same college. I was accepted but had to start the semester after she did, meaning we would be slightly long distance for a few months. It wasn't too bad because we were both only 2 hours apart, so it was pretty easy to visit, but our relationship did struggle a bit. I remember one night I got a phone call from her, and when I picked up, it was obvious it was a butt dial. I could hear her talking to some guy but couldn't make out what they were saying. I called her and she picked up and asked what was up. She said she was in bed about to go to sleep. I told her about the butt dial, and she said it was her friend Jack, who I met asking to borrow something. I thought it was odd, but brushed it off. A couple of weeks later, I was up there visiting her, and I met a bunch of cool people, including this guy, Luke. After I got back from visiting, I got a Facebook message from him saying, "Look, man, I hate to be the one to say this, but I think you're an awesome guy, and you don't deserve this to be happening to you. She's been cheating on you with this guy pretty soon after she started here." I was devastated, but I had to hear it from her, so I called her and said, "Are you cheating on me?" She gave a heavy sigh and said, "Well, at least I don't have to lie anymore." That guy's voice I had heard wasn't Jack. It was the guy she was cheating on me with. I just trusted her so much that I took her word for it. Even though it was painful, I was grateful to Luke for sending me that message. What's funny is that most of the people I met up there who were her friends sided with me after the breakup. So when I started going there that next semester, I had a group of friends to support me, and most of them are still very close friends of mine to this day. Story 14. My wife had been texting a lot and was very evasive when I inquired about it, though she smirked when she thought it was making me jealous. It turned out she'd left her email logged into my cell phone, so I noticed that she had a weekend Airbnb trip to a place that was a state away. We were living in different states at the time. That seemed to be of the quiet, romantic getaway type. Total occupancy, 2. Well, I thought that was fairly suspicious. So I monitored her Airbnb page, which was easy since we were friends on Airbnb, figuring out that the owner might leave a comment about how great she was as a guest, which it turned out she did. Except the review went something like, "Wife's name and guy, not named me, were wonderful guests," and so on. Yeah, so anyone want to guess what the probability is of that weekend trip involving infidelity? Pretty sure it's high. My wife apparently panicked, asked Airbnb to remove the review, altered her name on the site, and then finally, having failed to get the review taken down, deleted her account. I eventually asked her about it during a counseling session, and she had a ready-made defense about how she'd meant to take the trip with another coworker, but that person's car broke down, so guy's name ended up tagging along since guy's name was that coworker's boyfriend, and they all stayed there together, but guy's name signed the guest book, hence a totally honest mistake. In hindsight, I'm pretty sure she was not telling the truth. We are not still married either. Story 15. My boyfriend had been begging me for months to have a I finally agreed, and we invited our mutual friend over. Things got intense, and when he started having sex with her, he moaned, "Wow, you feel even better than usual." and everyone froze. He tried to explain that he was thinking about my body while having sex with her, but she felt so guilty that she confessed right then and there, begging me to forgive her. We don't really talk anymore, but the last I heard, she had been dating my ex for over a year. Story 16. My ex-wife had a severe alcoholic. One night, I returned home early from my night shift to find her drunk. As she was usually drunk when we had sex, I made a move on her, but during the act, she told me to hurry up because her husband would be home soon. Confused, I asked her who she was referring to which she responded again that her husband would be home soon. I was stunned to realize that I'd been having sex with a married woman. I got out of bed and turned on the light, which made her look bewildered. I decided to discuss this with her the next day. She denied being drunk, and I slept on the couch reflecting on the situation. Later, I heard her coming downstairs and into the kitchen. Shortly after, she approached me with a knife, but I managed to take it away from her and instructed her to go to bed. I took my children and spent the night at my mother's house. The following day, she was frantically calling me, not knowing where the kids were. We had a mini intervention and she promised to attend AA. However, she broke her promise, and within a month, she had returned to her old ways. One day, I came home to find a Los Angeles Dodgers hat on my couch. When I asked her who had been over, she initially denied anyone had come by, but later came up with a story about a neighbor borrowing something. I had lost faith in our marriage, but I was afraid of what would happen if I divorced her, as she might get custody of our children. Over the next month, she made up a story about Mexicans assaulting her, and I caught her kissing another man. 2 potheads even admitted to having a threesome with her. Finally, in July of 2008, I told her that I was filing for divorce. Although she fought me, I won custody, full custody, of my children. I started dating again and have been with my current wife for 9 years now. The end. Story 17. I discovered that my ex-boyfriend had been cheating on me when his youngest sister asked me when I left their apartment, even though I had not been there for 2 days. She mentioned hearing me talk to my ex, which was a lie. When I confronted him about it, he eventually admitted to cheating. Good riddance. Story 18. My boyfriend changed his phone password, and after a few months, my gut told me something was off. I unlocked his phone with my thumb and found a messaging app open with a girl he was going to meet the next day. I didn't confront him yet, instead reset passwords to access his messages, only to find out that he had been living a double life for the past 4 years, sending thousands of emails to other women. Our relationship appeared strong, and we even went to therapy to work on communication, but he had been hiding his issues from everyone. At first, I felt like my life was ruined and wondered what I did to deserve this, but then I calmly packed all his things and changed the locks while he was at work. The end. Note, I moved his belongings into storage and left a key with a passive-aggressive note. He apologized for what he did and made a social media post to tell everyone what he had done and to support me. When we met later, he admitted to his mistakes and was transparent. Although I loved him and would have supported him if he had sought therapy, it was the lying that made it impossible to continue the relationship. Story 19. Things had been a little shaky because I was working a lot and felt sapped when she wanted to go out and be social with friends, so I often stayed home. I wanted to do something nice for her for Valentine's Day, so I sent her friend a text asking if there was something that she may have mentioned she would like to do. While waiting for the response, I was in another room and saw her phone buzz with her friend's name. However, the number below the name did not match the one I had just sent a text to. There are a few times my blood has been that cold and I felt feelings of dread. I called the number with my phone and it rang before going to voicemail. Needless to say, it was the other guy. I confronted her about it and she was waiting to leave and had a bag packed in case I found out. She had no intentions of trying to work things out, so a month later she had moved out. I made a decision then that I could be broken up and miserable, or I could choose to be happy and be open to a relationship if it was available. I've since remarried and have 2 beautiful boys with my amazing wife. Regardless of the and horror in these stories, there is always an opportunity to be happy. If you're reading this thread because it happened to you or just from morbid curiosity, choose to be happy. Be the person that you can be proud of and move on to better things. Story 20. I came home early and they were fast enough to get dressed, but not in a natural state of being, if that makes sense. It was obvious something was just going down. Very cliched, got walked in on and tried to play it cool, like you see on TV. I asked him to leave and he did. We argued, she tried to lie, but soon confessed. It wasn't the first time she cheated, but it was the first time that I caught her in the act. Everything in the past was just text and stuff. She said that she never slept with the other people and it was just pics and flirting. In retrospect, that may not be BS. We divorced and both remarried. We're not friends by any stretch, but we are civil. Story 21. One day, my husband was getting ready for work and I saw him packing his GoPro case so he could take it to work. I thought, that's weird. Why would he be taking it to work? So when he jumped into the shower, I replaced his GoPro with mine and thought I'd look through the files when he left for work. My suspicions were on alert because he had just taken a trip to the Philippines with some friends, a guy's only weekend kind of thing. I fired up the camera and found 3 videos, and lo and behold, there he is in all his glory barebacking a Filipino pro. He was looking and posing for the camera like he was some star. I was enraged, but also looking at this fool acting like he's an adult film star was hilarious. Story 22. My college girlfriend and I lived together for a year, and I realized she would always have her phone on silent or just plain ignore calls from Jennifer. One day, I wrote down the number and called it a week later. It turned out to be her other boyfriend whom she had never broken up with before she came to college. Neither of us knew about each other, and she had been visiting him when she went home to see her parents on some weekends and breaks. We broke up soon after, of course, and her mom said that sometimes you just have to accept things and that I owed her an apology for breaking up with her. It gets worse, but that was the gist of it. Story 23. This story isn't mine, but a medical resident who I met on rotation recently. He was one of the nicest guys I've ever met, super intelligent and hardworking, training to be a trauma surgeon, but as humble as they come. He had been married for 2 years to his wife, and one night he got off of a 30-hour call early and headed home to surprise his wife with some flowers and her favorite dessert. It was the anniversary of the day they first met, only to find her in bed with a random dude. He was so excited and confused that he didn't know what to do and just left and went back to the hospital. I saw him at 5 a.m. sitting in the parking lot, hunched over, crying. He didn't even have his phone with him. He was just sitting there. Man, nothing breaks your heart more than seeing a grown man cry. It's not something you see often. We called his dad up and he came and picked him up. The guy ended up taking a leave from his residency. Turns out it wasn't the wife's first time sleeping around. I hope he gets back on his feet. He will make an amazing physician one day. Story 24. I went to log into my email and saw a suggested email address that I didn't recognize. I answered all of my husband's security questions and reset his password only to find emails between him and the neighbor. We were in therapy trying to recover from his cheating with her, and there they were exchanging love letters and planning their next rendezvous while I would be out of the house. The actual horror of the story is that our 7-year-old daughter accidentally caught them in the act by walking into our bedroom while I was at work. Story 25. My cousin was visiting us for a long weekend and she and I were super close, like sisters. I went upstairs to put the baby to bed and when I came back down, I caught them in the act on the couch, so that was fun.